Imagine having to sit at different lunch counters, go to different schools, and sit at different water fountains just because you are a person of color. Well, that's what Coretta Scott King went through, and she wanted to create a safe world for generations ahead of her. Coretta was a civil rights leader who made a big impact on the world. Coretta Scott King was born April 27, 1927, in a small town outside of Marion, Alabama. After her dad lost his job due to the Great Depression, she and her 3 siblings worked together on the family farm. Coretta was a tomboy. For example, she would hit wasp nests with sticks. But despite that, she loved music and piano, and she used it for great purposes. After she went to Antioch College to study music, she performed in a concert to support Black rights in March 1950. After marrying Martin Luther King Jr., June 18, 1953, they teamed up to do many boycotts and protests for Black rights. In the Montgomery bus boycott, 70% of people who rode the bus were Black, and after the boycott started, more than 65% of Black people would not ride the bus. In addition to that, Coretta, her husband, and others helped pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It was an act that made sure that segregation was against the law. She'd accomplished her goal, but she didn't stop there. Even though she had made an impact in the U.S., she wanted to make an impact all over the world. For example, she went to jail in 1985 for protesting South Africa's harsh segregation laws. In conclusion, those are the reasons I think Coretta Scott King deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. She was an amazing civil rights leader, and she made a big impact on the world. She died January 13, 2006, because of cancer, but she was very inspiring. Thank you for considering Coretta Scott King to be in the Hall of Fame.
Blessed are the poor, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Jesus of Nazareth is a very important person to Christians all over the globe today. Jesus was Jewish, born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth. These locations were part of Judea, which is now Israel. The people of Judea were in need of a leader who could help get them their freedom. Jesus traveled the land and gave many sermons and performed miracles. One day a man went to Jesus and begged him to heal his daughter. By the time Jesus arrived, the girl had died. Jesus walked over to the girl and said, "Little girl, get up." The girl stood up and walked, amazing all who were there. Jesus performed many other miracles, and some people began to hate him. The Romans identified Jesus as a criminal and crucified him. Jesus was crucified on Good Friday. His followers placed his body in a tomb and blocked it with a big rock. 3 days after Jesus' crucifixion, a disciple saw that the tomb was open. It was there where Jesus made his first appearance and told his disciples to spread the word of God before he ascended into heaven. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus founded Christianity. Jesus spoke of fairness and love over punishment. Now the world is a better place because of his teachings. This is why I believe that Jesus should be in the Hall of Fame.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Mary Anning. Mary Anning was an English fossil discoverer who found many things that no one else had before. She found the ichthyosaur, a small yet popular ocean-dwelling reptile that was 5 to 20 feet long on average. She'd also found the plesiosaur, which was larger and also took longer to dig up. She lastly found the very first pterosaur outside of Germany. She had found many important things, and when she was little, her father, and her brother loved to go fossil hunting on cliff sides. They found things like snake stones, which they called Mennonite. They also found teeth and shells, which they oftentimes sold to people passing by their small towns. When Mary's father passed away, that didn't discourage her to continue to find fossils, and without her, we'd only know half of the things about marine reptiles than we do today. Everything that I stated is down here.
Hello and welcome to my Hall of Fame nominee, Charles Darwin. Have you ever been on a boat adventure for 5 years straight? That is exactly what Charles Darwin did. Charles Darwin deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because of his theory of evolution and how he changed the world. Charles Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, sold very well despite most people at the time being of religion. Charles Darwin had many good traits, one of them being curious. Charles Darwin was curious as to how he could change the world of evolution. He was also very smart as he figured out evolution before anybody else had. Charles Darwin was very brave as he went on a very long journey, and at a time when no lights or electricity existed. He was also very daring as he had done many different journeys, but that one was the longest, and it was originally going to be 2 years, but it ended up being 5 years. Charles Darwin has had many different accomplishments and weird events in his life, one of which being that he had found evolution Revolution, which was the biggest achievement he had. His books were very successful, and he had originally trained to be a medical student, which he dropped on his long journey. Charles Darwin went to the Galapagos Islands and found a remarkable population of plants, birds, and reptiles that had developed in isolation off of the mainland. Charles Darwin also was going to be an Anglican priest, but he had to let go of that idea after his theory of evolution had conflicted with his religion. And those are some reasons why Charles Darwin should be in the Hall of Fame. As Charles Darwin once said, the love for animals is the most amazing attribute of mankind. Thank you for listening.
In 1993, she, Julia Child, was the first woman to be inducted into the Culinary Hall of Fame. I am honored to be nominating Julia Child for 2022's Hall of Fame. Julia was a culinary expert. She was a very talented and creative cook, inspiring so many people. Julia Child also served the U.S. government, and that is why I think she should be honored. Lastly, Julia Child was able to accomplish a lot in her childhood, making her a great addition to the Hall of Fame. Above all, Julia Child's best talent was her cooking. She, Julia Child, showed people that cooking could be fun, rewarding, and special. She also reminded them that meals could be crafted with great care and love. However, Julia Child had another job than cooking. That's right, she worked in a part of the government called the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, where she read top-secret reports and organized the information on nearly 10,000 index cards. She worked hard on this serious mission. Julia got to travel the world, try new foods, and even met the man who would change her life when she worked for the OSS. Even though Julia Child was able to accomplish a lot as an adult, she was also really talented as a kid. Julia was awarded the School Cup by Miss Catherine Branson herself. That's an honor given to one senior who best demonstrated the spirit of the school. Miss Branson had said that Julia was a practical, wholesome type of girl with superior intelligence. Thank you for considering my nominee, Julia Child, for 2022's Hall of Fame. And who knows, maybe one day you could be as honored, as inspirational, and as well known as she is. Thank you.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Sacagawea. Sacagawea joined the expedition in 1844. It took 5,000 miles and 16 months to arrive to their destination, which was in Idaho. She knew a lot of skills. She knew how to speak other languages, fight off animals, make a fire, and a shelter. In 1788, she was born in a tribe called Shoshone. When she was 12, she got attacked by the Hidestas tribe. She got captured by Toussaint Charbonneiro. She got sold off the marriage. Later, Sacagawea and her husband lived amongst the Hidasta and Mandan Indians. And later, she joined a expedition that been led by Lewis and Clark. This is why Sacagawea should be on the Hall of Fame.
Can you imagine living in a world where your skin-color determines where you can go to school, where you can eat at, or who you can play with? Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to change things and create equal rights for everyone. Martin Luther King Jr. Was born in 1929 when there was segregation. His dream was all people to live in peace together and be treated equally. He led protests, band people together, and taught people that you don't need violence to tell people what you want. Martin Luther King Jr., that's why I think Martin Luther King Jr. should be nominated into this year's Hall of Fame.
Excelsior, says Stanley. Stanley is my nominee for the Hall of Fame. Stanley dedicated his life into making comic books for the Marvel comic industry. He also made famous superheroes that kids and adults know from around the world. He also
also won a National Medal of the Arts Award in 2002. Now let me begin my speech. Stan Lee spent most of his life in a studio making comic books, or most specifically Marvel Comics. He made his first comic book in 1941. The name of the comic was Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge. Later on in 1961, him and Jack Kirby created their first comic book. It was the first Fantastic Four comic. He inspired me to watch Marvel and create a lot of new things. Next, he created many superheroes that kids know around the world. Stan Lee had a big imagination and loved creating things. He made superheroes such as Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, and many more. He also helped DC make some of their comics. He worked with artists such as Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. In 1962, we saw the first appearance of Spider-Man. A year later, in 1963, we saw the first appearance of Iron Man. After that, Stan Lee decided to keep making comic books for Marvel until he passed away. Lastly, Stan Lee won the National Medal of the Arts Award in 2002. He won this award for his groundbreaking storytelling and recreating America's comic book. He also won it for his complex plots and humane superheroes and inspired many to be honest, courageous, and help the more needy. He deserved this award and he won many others in the future. Thank you for reading my speech. I hope you enjoyed it. And Stan Lee is a big inspiration to me, and I really hope he's an inspiration to you. Hi, Abby!
You know that people used to call Abraham Lincoln Honest Abe? Lincoln was granted this name because of his honesty and loyalty. Lincoln became president in 1860. During his presidency, he guided our country through the Civil War and helped abolish slavery. Lincoln was born in 1809. His family was very poor but hardworking. Lincoln became a lawyer thanks to all his friends and his hard work. He had strong political beliefs and the Republican Party chose him as their president candidate. He hated slavery and thought that every man or woman, colored or not, should be respected and have the same right. This led him to write the Emancipation Proclamation, which stated that all people, regardless of the color of their skin, should be free. Lincoln also delivered the Gettysburg Address in 1863. Through Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address was one of the United States' most famous speeches that honored the soldiers who died in war. Throughout Lincoln's life, he helped others and made our country a better place. He inspired other people to become a little more like himself. These are all the reasons why Abraham Lincoln should be in this year's Hall of Fame.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Galileo Galilei. Have you ever looked up at the stars through the beauty of a telescope and wondered who invented it? It was Galileo. Did you know Galileo had 4 jobs? He was a pharmacist, physicist, scientist, and astronomer. Another cool fact is that when Galileo invented the telescope, he was the one that decided that you should point to the stars instead. He was born on February 15, 1564 in Pisa, Italy. His parents, Giulia and Vincenzo, belonged to the nobility but were not rich. Galileo was the first of 6 children. He went to Pisa University to study medicine. He was nicknamed the Wrangler in college because he loved to argue, debate, and fight. He became a teacher in 1585. Soon after, he laid the foundation for the scientific method. He published the first scientific paper ever based on the telescope, called The Starry Messenger. The Catholic Church read his paper and sentenced him to life in prison because this paper was considered heresy. The Catholic Church later felt bad for him and decided to put him on house arrest. He continued to write while on house arrest. In his later years, he became blind. He died on January 8, 1642. It has been an honor for me to tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Galileo Galilei. He was an amazing scientist and astronomer, and he deserves to be nominated for the Hall of Fame this year.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Napoleon Bonaparte. It is highly unusual for a general to be in over 70 battles and only lose 8, but Napoleon did. He was always determined to accomplish his goals, and it all paid off when he became the Emperor of France. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica in 1759. Growing up,
He was inspired by Alexander the Great and he wanted to be the leader of France. Napoleon Bonaparte graduated at École Militaire. After seizing political power in France, he became the Emperor of France. Napoleon was known for his ambition and skilled military strategy. He quickly rose to power during the French Revolution. When he came to power in France, he fixed many of the nation's problems, such as ensuring that contractors and troops got paid on time. Napoleon knew how important people's opinions were, and he used that to achieve his goals. Napoleon had a lot of success in his life. He was smart and determined. That is why I have nominated Napoleon Bonaparte for the Hall of Fame.
Welcome. It's an honor to tell you about my nominee for the History Hall of Fame, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci is one of the greatest artists alive, creating the Last Supper and the Mona Lisa. But he was also a great inventor and scientist. His science spread out in many areas such as anatomy and geology. But one of his most famous was his contributions to the starting of tribology, the study of friction. Leonardo was born on April 15, 1452 in the town of Vinci. No one in his family ever wanted him or gave him a lot of attention, apart from his uncle Francesco. He and Leonardo would go into the mountains where Leonardo was fascinated by nature, which is what started his love of science. As Leonardo grew older, he started making machine sketches that were far out of his time period, and some of these machines helped him create the system that started tribology, which he discovered by inventing the ball bearings and the roller bearings. He reasoned that frictional resistance differs according to the nature of the surface in contact and increases in direct proportional to the load. This also went into the four powers of nature: movement, weight, force, and percussion. Leonardo did not have any formal schooling, but was still a hardworking individual that contributed a lot to science in many ways. It is clear that Leonardo was not only an amazing artist and engineer, but was also a scientist known for his work that shaped tribology in many ways, and is the exact person that should be in the History Hall of Fame.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, the Vipers. Did you know who made the first airplanes? Orville and Wilbur Wright did, and their work changed the world because it was hard to travel at the time, and they helped people go to places that they never could. Before they made, and they were determined to build the first time machine. Wilbur was born in 1867, and his brother Orville was born 4 years later. They lived in Dayton, Ohio for most of their life. Before they made planes, they made printing presses and published a newspaper article called the West Side News. After that, they made their own bike shop called the Bicycle Co. And then soon after that, they started working on planes. They would build and create planes, and soon after many attempts, they flew their first plane at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Throughout their lives, they were brave for flying the air, passionate about building it, and determined to fly it. And they never gave up when it broke or crashed. That's why the Vipers are perfect nominees for this year's Hall of Fame.
Welcome. It is an honor to tell you about my History Hall of Fame nominee, Mohandas Gandhi. Did you know that Gandhi was put in jail for trying to make the world a better place? This may be surprising, but Gandhi's government did not agree with his ideas. He led peaceful protests against unfair laws and eventually led Indian independence. Gandhi was born in Porbandar, India on October 2nd, 1869. As a child, Gandhi was fearful and shy, but his parents were caring and they took him as a good person. He was the youngest of 5 children. Gandhi had trouble in school and was not the best student. Growing up, he was interested in fairness and law. He got a degree as a lawyer, but was unsuccessful in studying a career in law. Instead, he worked in politics to fight for Indian rights, fair treatment of the poor, and equal rights for women. Gandhi did not agree with British rule over India and led countless people to protest and marches too. Gandhi was loved by many and was called Mahatma, which means great soul. Throughout his lifetime, Gandhi was known as peaceful and brave. He was persistent and respectful to law. Gandhi inspired many protesters for generations, and he still does today. As Gandhi said, one must be the change one wishes to be in the world. That is why I think Gandhi deserves to be in the History Hall of Fame.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Jeanne d'Arc. Did you know that in 1920, Joan of Arc was declared a saint by the Catholic Church? Joan of Arc was declared a saint for many reasons. One reason is she led an army into battle when women did not participate in war. Because of her bravery, she got the coat of arms by King Charles II. She freed the city of Orleans to try and end the 100 Years' War. Joan of Arc was born in 1412 when the 100 Years' War was happening. When she was born, the French were losing. At the age of 13, she started having religious visions in her head that led her into battle to save the people of Orleans at the age of 17. She got the coat of arms by King Charles VII. She was brave in battle because she heard voices in her head that told her she could do it. People say she was sent by God to save them. Joan of Arc would be a perfect example of a Hall of Fame nominee.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my nominee for the History Hall of Fame, Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart is known for many things, mostly for being a pioneer of aviation. However, did you know that on top of being a fearless female flyer, she also designed her own line of clothing? Amelia Earhart was born in 1897 in Atchison, Kansas. From when she was a little girl, Amelia was unlike most girls her age. She liked to play sports that were usually only left to boys, such as football and tennis. Amelia's parents encouraged her to participate in the activities she liked and even let her wear pants so she could play comfortably. Amelia attended a gone school. She was a good student and was elected vice president of her class. She was a strong athlete. When Amelia was 23, she took her first flight in an airplane. As soon as she was in the air, she said, "I knew I myself had to fly." Amelia took flying lessons from a woman named Netta Snook. Amelia got her pilot's lessons and set many records for height and speed with her plane, the Canary. In 1932, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Amelia set many more records and inspired others to follow their dreams through speeches and interviews. On July 2nd, 1937, Amelia Earhart attempted to fly around the world. Sadly, Amelia, her plane, and the navigators on board with her disappeared when she tried to land on Howland Island. To this day, no one knows what happened to her. In conclusion, Amelia Earhart showed the world that women and girls can do much more than cooking and cleaning, and could do things that were only considered men's things. Amelia Earhart was a role model for young girls and showed that they could do anything, even if people doubted them. Amelia said, "No borders, just horizons, only freedom." This is why I think Amelia Earhart should be nominated into the History Hall of Fame.
Welcome. It's an honor to tell you about my nominee for the History Hall of Fame, Nelson Mandela. Did you know that Nelson Mandela was arrested for 27 years for believing people should be treated equally? Nelson was born on July 18, 1918 in South Africa. Education was very important to him. He excelled at sports such as track and boxing. Nelson believed that everyone should be treated equally regardless of the color of their skin, so he joined the ANC. Mandela and others protested against apartheid, which further segregated the country. He was arrested several times for treason, and he was imprisoned on Robben Island. Nelson won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 and became the first black South African president in 1994 with the help of the ANC. In conclusion, Nelson had a strong impact on other South Africans and had a good leadership. Nelson always believed himself. This is why Nelson Mandela should be elected into the History Hall of Fame.
Welcome. Let me tell you about my Hall of Fame nominee, Thelma Braun Johnson. Thelma Braun Johnson is a kind, caring person whose empathy saved the lives of the wild horses who are near extinction. She deserves to be in the Equestrian Hall of Fame because she has made a big difference with wild horses. Thelma fought to, quote, "stop the exploitation and annihilation of the wild horses." Thelma Braun Johnson was born in Reno, March 5, 1912. She felt a lot of empathy for suffering animals at age 11 when she was treated with polio and having to spend months in a cast. She had time to care for the animals on her parents' ranch called the Double Lazy Heart Ranch. In 1950, Thelma was driving to work when she was behind a truck crammed with wild horses, with blood dripping from their backs. She followed the truck and found out that the wild horses were being taken to a slaughterhouse. Later, she made a campaign for the rights of wild horses, and in 1955, her campaign in the Nevada State Congress led to a bill banning aircraft and land vehicles from capturing wild horses on state grounds, and the nickname Wild Horse Annie. Advertising for doggy dives was increasing the demand for wild horses caught on federal lands, and making private dog food companies a lot of money in dog food, and later became a vicious cycle involving the killing and slaughtering of wild horses. In 1959, the Wild Horse Animal Act prohibited the use of poisoning of water holes that were used to capture or sadly kill wild horses. Thelma Braun Johnson also convinced
people to write letters to Congress, who received more letters on this issue. She also established the Act of 1971, the Wild Free Roaming Act. She also established the International Organization for Mustangs and Zeros Act. Sadly, Velma Braun Johnson died at 65 years old, June 27, 1977, after losing a brave battle to cancer. But because Velma Braun Johnson stood up for the wild horses, this made her a threat of many vicious attacks, including threats to her life. That was the brave journey of Velma Braun Johnson. Thank you.